Hi, it's time for another verb of the day. Today's verb is anticipate, and this verb was suggested by the viewer Abdi. Abdi, thank you so much for this suggestion. Now, let's spend a moment reviewing some of the definitions or ways that we can use this verb. The first way you might encounter the verb anticipate means to regard as probable or likely to happen. Related to this first definition are the verbs to expect or to predict that something may happen. Related to this is our second definition. The second way to use anticipate means to guess or be aware of what will happen and take action to be prepared for that thing. So with the second definition, sometimes you will hear staff members talking about sort of guessing what their boss or supervisor may want or what steps would be expected, and then beginning to do those things. Sometimes that is regarded as a really desirable quality in an employee. We can also apply this to thinking about clients or customers. I know this verb comes up sometimes when I work with people studying to become certified nursing assistants or CNAs, and we talk about anticipating what the residents, which tend to be elderly individuals they're taking care of, but anticipating what their needs may be. And that could be something like reminding them to use the bathroom before they take a nap, but being aware of what the consequences would be without it as well. A third way you might encounter the verb anticipate can mean to look forward to something. This has a really positive or happy meaning to it. And then a fourth way you may encounter this verb anticipate can mean to serve as a forerunner to. Now, as I looked for examples of this verb, I would say this fourth definition was certainly less common in more recent newspaper articles, magazine articles, blogs, etc. But where I did encounter that verb was in connection to academic research. And so the way we would see it is sort of like one idea anticipated a second. So the second thing that came or that developed from the first bit of research. And that could be a theory or some sort of model that had been developed. For now, you should know that anticipate is a regular verb. If you want to form the progressive form of our verb, what you're going to do is drop the E on the end because we have a verb that ends in the pattern vowel, consonant, E, and we're adding a suffix that starts with a vowel letter. So we're going to drop that E, add ing to form anticipating. The past tense and the participle form of our verb could be made by just adding the letter D since this verb already ends in an E. Now the base verb, anticipate, ends in a T sound. This means the ed ending is going to make an id sound. We're going to add another syllable to the word when we say it. The past tense and the participle form of the verb should sound like this. Anticipated, anticipated. Okay. Now, I don't have any phrasal verbs that we need to study or review, so we'll move on and do a little verb tense practice. Today, we'll look at some examples in the past progressive and the simple future. Let's start with the past progressive. Now, some teachers or maybe even your textbook may call this the past continuous, and that's just fine. It means exactly the same thing. In this verb tense, we're describing an action that was ongoing during some time period or at some point in the past. The reason I like saying past progressive is I always encourage my students to notice we have two P's in the name of our verb tense. That's going to mean you need two parts to make your verb. And this is a verb tense where we need to pay attention to our subject. So if our subject is I he, she, or it, I'll use was, and then that ing form the verb. But if my subject is you, we, or they, I'll use were, and then the ing form of the verb. Let's take a look at the first example. We were anticipating bad news from the doctor, but we were relieved to learn the injury would heal quickly. Okay? Now, this affirmative sentence is a great example of what we see quite frequently in the past progressive, and that is two clauses, one using the past progressive, and then the other using the simple past tense. And the reason we see that is one action is kind of continuing when that simple past tense interrupts it. So here, what the sentence means or suggests is someone was expecting bad news, right? But instead, they received good news. So that's our example there. Now let's move on and look at making negative past progressive sentences. Again, we need to pay attention to our subject. We'll use either was or were, followed by not, and then that ing form of the verb. You may see was not combined into the contraction wasn't, or were not combined into the contraction weren't. Okay? Here's another example. She wasn't eagerly anticipating the meeting with her supervisor. This is an example that would go back to the third definition of our verb, where we were talking about looking forward to something. But here, because it's the negative, we're suggesting someone is not looking forward to this. Finally, let's look at making a yes or no question in the past progressive. To do this, we start with was or were. Whatever form of be matches our subject, that subject comes next. Then we'll use the ing form of the verb. Here's another example. Were you anticipating customers' needs? So maybe a supervisor is asking their employee to sort of reflect on how well they were reacting or preparing for meeting those customers' needs. Maybe this person is a server in a restaurant, right? And sort of thinking about, oh, they may need water, or maybe I need to check on if they want to place an order for dessert or what have you. Now, let's move on and make some sentences in the simple future. Today, we're going to make sentences with will. This is most commonly used as people make predictions or promises or offers. You might also see it used in connection to people discussing their plans. The nice thing about making sentences in the simple future with will is that our pattern or structure is going to stay the same no matter what our subject is. So in the affirmative, you're going to see a subject, you'll see will, and then the base verb. Here's another example. These birds will anticipate further climate changes and shift their habitats northward. So here, this sentence, I believe, comes from a scientist making a prediction based on what has already been observed with certain birds that like to reside in colder areas. They have to keep going further north to sort of have that environment to which they are accustomed to. Now let's move on and make a sentence in the negative here. So again, to do that, doesn't matter what our subject is, but we'll start with our subject. We'll use will not and then the base verb. You might also see the contraction for will not, which is won't, pronounced with a long O sound. Here's another example sentence. The opposing team won't anticipate this play. Right? This is suggesting they're not going to be able to predict. They maybe will not have planned or shifted or adjusted. And sounds like this team is making a plan on how they're going to score their next goal or their next points, whatever the sport may be. Finally, let's look at making a yes or no question in the simple future. To do this, you want to start with will, then we'll have our subject, and then that base verb. Here's the last example. Will the AI search engine anticipate users' needs? This is a question that gets asked more and more as our technology, particularly artificial intelligence, develops more. Now, let's move on and talk about some words and a phrase related to today's verb. The first word we're going to discuss is the noun form of the word. We pronounce the noun anticipation. Okay. So, this noun refers to the action of anticipating something. It could be used in place of the words expectation or prediction in some cases. But this is going to encompass all of those definitions of anticipate. So we mentioned predicting, we mentioned looking forward to, and I think that's going to connect well to my next example here. The anticipation for Taylor Swift's 12th album is building. So just this week, some news has been released, and if you enjoy this artist's music, then you're probably excited. You're probably looking forward to this happening soon. Okay. Another word you might encounter is the adjective anticipatory. Okay. This describes a noun that is either happening, performed, or felt in anticipation of something. An example of this in a sentence might be, the researchers are examining anticipatory anxiety during key life transitions. So this sentence, again, is referencing maybe some scientific research that's being done. Sounds like they're looking at individuals who might be moving towards a particular large life event, some kind of transition. Maybe it's going away to college, getting married, having a child, something of that nature. And they're looking at how much anxiety someone has prior to these big life events. One more phrase for us to discuss today, and that is in anticipation. When people use this phrase, they're describing something that's either being done with a probability or expectation of something happening. So, an example of this might be, in anticipation of bad weather, they packed ponchos, boots, and umbrellas. So here they thought, oh, there's maybe a very strong likelihood or a strong probability it's going to rain, so they acted with that expectation in mind. Again, I want to say a special thanks to Abdi for suggesting today's verb, and I thank you all for watching. I hope you have a great day.